shoe review today. Today we're reviewing the Sportiva Akasha 2, a very technical, sturdy shoes that is perfect for technical running in the mountain, in the jungle. I've tested it quite extensively, a lot in training run and also at long haul 100 mile. So here's my review of the Sportiva Akasha 2. Hey, Simon here. Welcome to my channel. I'm an ultra runner on my way to racing 100 mile ultra marathon. On my channel, I provide a lot of tips video and also some gear review to help you get out there, choose the best gear for the adventure that you're gonna have. And today we're reviewing the Sportiva Akasha 2, a very technical shoe, a very sturdy shoe that have its use, but it's good to understand what this shoe is and what this shoe is not. And just like with any other review, I really try to test the shoes extensively. So I don't just go for a 10-mile run and let you know how that felt. No, I run with them quite extensively. These ones specifically, I think I did probably between 100 and 200 mile in total. Most of it was in training, but I also did long haul 100 mile ultra marathon, which turned out to not be the best choice of shoe, not because of the shoe itself, but because I think you need to think about shoes a little bit like you think about wine and food, and sometimes there's good pairing and sometimes there's bad pairing. And in this case, the pairing was not good. The shoe itself is absolutely fantastic, but long haul is a non-technical flat course. So it was a bad decision, but I'll talk a little bit more about why I had actually picked these shoes, because obviously I had tested them before and why it turned out to not be the great choice. But I'll also discuss a little bit where I think these shoes really shine, because these are really great shoes for what they are, and understanding what they are is really what we're going to do today. Just like my other gear review, I don't want to go too much into the detail of the specs. You can go on their webpage, you're smart, you can read about it. What I really want to talk about is how do these shoes feel? If you get these shoes and you run with them, what kind of shoes are you getting into? What will be the feeling overall? Because shoes can be pretty different. Of course, it's personal, so it's good if you can try them yourself, potentially in the store, making sure that the fit is good. Because also, huge disclaimer, when I got these shoes, I got them online and I got them from La Sportiva directly. And I think the size that I picked was a little too small, so I think I should have increased by 0.05, and we'll talk about it in long haul, because in training that was a non-issue, but in the race that was actually an issue. So I wish I had been able to test them in the store before. That's really on me. So if we look a little bit at the shoe La Sportiva, first of all, I actually do love the color pattern. And as opposed to some other shoe, this is a very technical shoe, and you can tell it's very technical. It's quite narrow and the grip underneath is very, very strong. So this is great in anything that is very muddy or very wet on rocks. So if you're in the mountain, if there is a little bit of snow, if there's a little bit of mud, you know you're not going to slip with these shoes. So that's the most important thing with anything that is technical, because slipping can lead to rolling your ankle, can lead to injury. So with that, you have a lot of protection for this. You also have a lot of protection. The toe here, it's very sturdy, it's very protective. It doesn't go so deep though, and I think that's always the balance that they try to have between basically having a caoutchouc boot or having a running shoe and having a mesh in the front that can be breathable. I wish they had extended this a little bit more, but it's really covering for most instances when you're bumping your toes on rocks in mountain. It's really helpful. There's other shoes that it's basically inexistent and you're basically gonna lose your toenail because of that. But this is extremely sturdy. But yeah, if it would go just maybe one finger more, I think I would be a little bit happier because of the way I use these shoes, which is, if it's very technical, this is the shoe I want to go with. But something else that is important to mention is, if you look at the mesh itself, it's quite thick and it's quite sturdy overall. So you have a lot of protection, and that's always the problem with any shoes, and it goes back to how you pair your shoe to your trail. Sometimes it's colder, sometimes it's warmer, and these shoes would not be great for something that is very warm. If you're gonna run in the desert in the middle of the summer, this is very thick and you're gonna sweat a lot in these shoes. They're not the most breathable. On the flip side, if you're up in the mountain and there is some snow, that's gonna provide you some protection. That's gonna keep your feet a little bit warmer than a lot of different models that are very thin fabric that are meant to be breathable. So this is meant more to protect your shoes in a harsh environment, which again, great if you're in a harsh environment, but if you're in Florida and it's hot, maybe it's not the best, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. So what else? If we look at the midsole, you have a decent amount. It's not the craziest here, and it's not the fluffiest shoes. So as opposed to some other shoes that I've discussed on this channel where the feel good kind of shoes, the very cushy feeling, this is not a shoe like that. This is a shoe that you get to run aggressively in the mountain. You can also see that the shoe itself is relatively narrow, which is great when you're trying to be very precise and dissecting the trail. Really, you're trying to land your feet there exactly and kind of calculated move. A shoe like that is very practical because you're not gonna hit on the side as opposed to those fluffier shoes sometimes that just go a little bit wider. You don't have this issue with that. What you need to be careful with shoes like that are always a little narrower is that the stability is fine, but it's not as stable as if it was a little bit broader. So you need to be careful about landing somewhere that is not rolling too much. Finally, if we look at how you tie your shoes, the lace, everything, I mean, it's pretty basic. There's nothing to discuss about here, so it's doing the job just fine. What's good is that the tongue here is pretty thick, so despite the fact that you're using shoelace, it's not really gonna be an issue. So they do feel relatively comfortable. So how did I feel running with these shoes? What's my kind of takeaway with the La Sportiva Akasha 2? Well, first of all, I did enjoy these shoes. If I didn't enjoy them, I would probably not take the time to make a review video. But it's a really circumstantial shoe for me. You need to use them at the right time on the right trail, but there's a lot of benefit to these shoes. Just if we start with the cost is pretty reasonable, but these shoes are super durable. I mean, like I said, I probably run, 100 to 200 mile in these shoes, and they look basically new, as if I didn't use them before. And that's something that is pretty important. The more you run, the more you spend on shoes, and at some point it's kind of piling up. So it's good to keep in mind like the dollar per mileage that you get. And for these shoes, they're very durable. And not just durable in terms of mileage, but this is super sturdy. This is super resistant. So even if you hit rocks or whatever, it's not gonna tear apart. This is gonna look like that for a very long time, and you can keep these shoes for a very long time, which is definitely an advantage. The other part that is good to mention is that I felt very safe running in these shoes, both because of the traction. I really felt like I'm sticking to the ground, so I don't need to worry about going too fast or taking a turn a little too aggressively. I know I'm gonna stick to the ground, and I have good protection on my toe, on the foot, against the element. If it's raining, if there's some snow, no problem, my shoe is protected in that. It doesn't feel good, it doesn't feel comfortable, but it's reassuring, and you know that your feet will be protected. On the flip side, I just mentioned it, it's not the most cozy shoes that you get. It's not these fluffy shoes that you feel you're running on cloud. That's really not that type of shoe. This is an aggressive technical shoe for mountain running, especially if you're running in the elements. Which also means that they're pretty sturdy. It's hard to demonstrate on the camera, but this is pretty sturdy. It feels pretty stiff, even though now they're broken in. It feels stiff, so at first you might be surprised a little bit, and I think potentially if you've mostly used in the past shoes that are not as stiff, maybe even you will have a little bit of pain in your feet as your kind of tendon are adapting to how much strength you need to bend in. Now, I'm not saying it's crazy stiff, it's just a little stiffer than what I'm typically using myself. The other thing that I mentioned before and is important, I don't think these are great in hot weather because they're pretty thick, and I think La Sportiva has other shoes that are actually better in hot weather that have very similar profile but just a better mesh. Another aspect that I would mention, it maybe it is an issue, maybe it's not an issue, but it was a little bit for me. And as you know on my channel, I do race a lot of ultra marathon. It's very common that I will do 100-miler, and sometimes what will happen is that I will have heel pain that will develop during the race, and sometimes it will stay a little bit after the race, and that can kind of pile up. If I go race a race and I still had pain from before, it's going to get worse, and it's kind of a cycle. So I need to be careful and vigilant about these things. But I think that's true in general. If you do a 100-mile ultra marathon or very long distance, you need to protect your heel. And I don't think these are necessarily perfect for that. I think that they're a little too stiff for me. And maybe it's just because I got used to cushier shoes for 100 miles. So for me, I would rather use these shoes in training run when we're having fun in the mountain. And actually, it makes perfect sense because when you're racing a 100-mile ultramarathon, unless you're Kilian or Jim or Francois or Courtney, there's a lot of walking involved in the ultra in the mountain. So do you really need the most technical shoe anyway? Probably not. But when I go on training run, if I'm running for 10, 15, 20 miles, I'm running the whole thing and I'm running decently fast, and I really want to have the reassurance I can go fast, I can push hard, I can attack the downhill and not be worried about slipping, about injuries. And this is perfect for that. So for me, the shoe I will keep more as a training in the mountain when I'm going with Nara over the weekend, especially if we're going kind of springtime or potentially the fall and it's a little colder. You have a little bit of snow at the top or on the ridge. This is absolutely perfect for that. So very happy with these shoes. Now let's talk about long haul 100 mile. So I'm still working on the movie for long haul 100 mile, but if you're not familiar with long haul 100 mile in Florida, first of all, it is in Florida and it's a very, very flat course. It's not technical. So basically it's the opposite of what I described so far. So Simon, why the hell did you use this shoe for long haul? It was a bad decision for me. There's no question about it. But the reason I picked these shoes, it's because before the race, the forecast was that there would be a downpour of rain, torrential rain. And what I had also heard from people that raced the year before is that the course itself was very, very muddy. It was very difficult to run through that because there was just so much mud. And now that on top of that, we would have a downpour of rain, I felt that this would be 100-mile in the mud, which then first of all, when it comes to the cushiness and my heel, I felt this would be soft enough that this would not be an issue. But what I really wanted was to have the good traction, so the tread underneath. And because it is January, and even though it's Florida, the water itself could have been very cold, so I wanted something that was a little bit warmer. And it turned out that it didn't rain at all and it was decently hot. So I was sweating way too much in these shoes. And then when you combine with the fact that the shoe is, it fits me fine in training run, but it's just a little too small. And when you run an ultra marathon, when you're on your feet for potentially 20, 22 hours, your feet will start swelling a little bit. So what was a tight fit before will become too tight, and then that will lead to blisters. And this is exactly what happened. All right, and that's it, folks. This is my impression of the La Sportiva Akasha 2. It's a great technical shoe, very sturdy, very durable, decently affordable. If you go in the mountain, especially if there's some snow and some mud, this is a great option. For me, not necessarily when I'm racing 100-mile ultra marathon, but when it comes to training run, when I'm really shredding these trails, running downhill like a maniac, this is an absolutely great choice. I hope you appreciate this video. If you do, please leave a thumbs up, comment below. Have you tried these shoes, or what are shoes that you would want me to try in the future? Let us know in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching and see you next time.